So it is very, very likely today that we will finally see what the candidate list does look like for, well, the first round, truly and properly, before things really get underway. But as I'm doing at this moment, that candidate list hasn't been yet fully sorted out. We are waiting. Obviously, I'm doing on some Monday. This will come out Tuesday afternoon, but potentially by this point, by late that day, we will probably know who is in the running officially, who is out, who is in, and what okey cokey shenanigans are going to get pulled by some of these people who are left in. We've already had, bizarrely, Sylvia Braverman has come out and accused Penny Mordaunt of making her pregnancy apparently more stressful. Apparently, she accused Penny Mordaunt of putting undue pressure on her when she was pregnant. And yeah, this is one of the first strangest attacks I have certainly seen on Penny Mordaunt, probably because at the moment she is certainly, I think, second, one of the favourites, of course, to get to the final two. And I think she's in the sort of, as on my list who will get the final two, she's certainly one of those who will get there. As I said, I've been telling you about her for, I don't know, a couple of weeks, couple of months now. Watch out for her. She's got the backing of quite a lot of conservatives, so it's very likely she will get to the final two. But we've also got to talk today about, because one thing I've been warning you about is there are a lot, and I mean a lot, of American right-wing libertarian dark money think tanks flooding money over to the UK. They have been doing this for the past 2 years or so since Brexit. Why? Because they want to get, or at least they recognize that the UK is very, very close to possibly getting a really right-wing libertarian in office. And no other, shall we say, government in the world has ever come sort of this close. So they are not only trying to back a potential libertarian, a right-wing libertarian candidate, because, oh my God, it's their fondest dreams fulfilled. And then they can start to push those policies and that agenda even more, especially in the Republican Party, and get those guys in. And I know there are obviously some in the Republican Party, but they're not, shall we say, at a stage yet where maybe they can do a proper successful run to be president. But you've got a situation where, because they are funneling money into some of these conservative candidates, we could end up with a right-wing libertarian in office who will fulfill all their deepest fantasy desire of, small state, low tax, no regulations, you name it, they will go for it. They're already trying to fund hard the abortion laws, which I've been trying to ring the bell on for quite a while now. You had a guy stand up in Parliament who brought this up, saying, I just want to have the conversation. Nadine Dorries came out just a couple of days ago and said that she wants to see this question of lowering sort of the time to a shorter time span where you can have an abortion. It's happening already. I warned about it, and people said that won't happen. It's happening. And we have to be really careful about this right-wing dark money that's coming from America. So we're going to go over some of the candidates, or at least in this case, some of the people who are receiving money. Because I know Steve Baker's on this list, but obviously he's not a candidate. But at the time this article was written, it's fair to say, yeah, he was a potential candidate at that time. So as always, before we do go jumping into this, please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below there is a link to my Patreon page and a motivation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much to all those people who do help support the channel that way. And of course, there's the YouTube thank you button. And of course, there is the YouTube subscription button where you can subscribe to that. You get all sorts of little bells, whistles, and badges to use on YouTube. So, as always, over to the Yorkshire Bylines with their article on this of how would you like your government? Right, far right, or batshit crazy? On the 7th of July 2020, following yet another sordid scandals of mishandlings by Downing Street and having squirmed his way through a parliamentary liaison committee in which he refused to confirm he would respect the outcome of a second vote of no confidence in his leadership, the Prime Minister finally agreed to resign one day. Assuming that Boris Johnson can be prized out of Downing Street, the scramble for the crown is on and the contenders are declaring their intentions to stand. Of the 10 likely candidates, here are so far of the 6 known assets of the American libertarian right. These candidates will have their war chests filled by the same interests who backed Donald Trump when he lost power back in 2020 and who supported his claims that the election was stolen. Some of these interests who put the conservative judges in the Supreme Court of the United States, who have not only shocked the world with last month's judgment to overturn Roe v. Wade, but also plan to revisit the US election process, potentially allowing individual states to nominate their electoral college candidate, even if the popular vote went the other way, thus effectively negating democratic elections. The same financial interests who are now lining up to purchase large areas of the UK to convert it into private cities known as charter cities, in which they will now operate outside the legal framework from the rest of Britain. Those funding these interests have heavily invested in the fossil fuel industries, such as Charles Koch Foundation and ExxonMobil, represented by transatlantic think tanks such as the Heritage Foundation and the Institute of Economic Affairs, or the IEA. They form part of a global web of right-wing libertarian think tanks called the Atlas Network. Below is a resume of the candidates for MPs who are also members of what is known as the Tufton Street Mafia. So first of all, Steve Baker, he's no longer a candidate. He's announced he's not running. But described by the former government minister, Sir Alan Duncan, as in his diaries as, quote, the turd and, quote, the nut job who should be taken away by the men in white coats and certified as clinically insane, Steve Barker was baptized by full immersion in the sea at Porfton when he was 14 and describes his politics as Christian libertarianism. When asked about his views on democracy in an interview for High Profile, he declared that, quote, God is a libertarian as well as an absolute monarchist. He concludes that we are not supposed to be living in a democratic system, rather under God as king, obeying the law, obeying his laws. What? Even I've never heard about this. This is crazy. But the thing is, I know there's going to be a lot of Americans watching that and just go, yeah, that's what our politicians say of it all the time. But not over here. I'm generally shocked that I haven't heard about these comments before. But wow. He belongs to at least 10 very opaquely funded lobbying groups and think tanks, mainly based in Tufton Street, including the Climate Change Denying Net Zero Scrutiny Group and the Global Warming Policy Foundation, the Anti-EU European Research Group, the Anti-Lockdown COVID Recovery Group, the Libertarian Alliance, the Conservatives of Britain, Conservatives Way Forward, and the Christian Cornerstone Group and the Cobra Centre. In an interview this week about his leadership plans, he let the inner despot escape for long enough to announce that he, quote, if he seized power, he'd do a good job. Penny Mordaunt, she's definitely in the running. I've said before, I think she's got a very good chance of getting to the final two. Formerly Minister, State for Trade Policy since 2001. Since 2021. Penny Mordaunt is heavily inspired by Margaret Thatcher, a member of the ERG in Tufton Street. She described the libertarian, the liberal left as an, quote, overeducated underachievers. And in May of this year, she signed a memorandum of understanding with American state Indiana. She hopes that this is the first of many agreements of the future targeted states in the pipeline are ultra-conservative strongholds, Oklahoma, North and South Carolina, and Texas. Her Indiana agreement covers energy, advanced manufacturing, and pharmaceuticals. In return, she has offered up disadvantaged parts of the UK as, quote, partners in a badly word phrases word salad, which leaves us very none the wiser of her real intentions. She praised the IEA for coming up with the ideas, although it has been largely mocked by trade experts such as Peter Yilcomb as a non-binding and essentially meaningless. Sajid Javid, definitely someone who's certainly one of the biggest names in the leadership race. The first to go from the cabinet, Sajid Javid left, and of course the domino effect of his resignations, which ultimately toppled Johnson. In his heartfelt resignation speech to the House of Commons, he portrayed himself as the complete opposite of Johnson, a school-educated outsider a loving husband, father, and son. That may be so, but the long-term Eurosceptic has also another Tufton Street acolyte, the vote leave favourite for the 2019 Conservative leadership bid win, whose campaign manager was the highly controversial Matthew Elliott. Elliott is a linchpin of the libertarian think tanks of the Legstrom Institute and, of course, the Taxpayers Alliance, and the husband of Sarah Carla, the chair of the Republicans overseas. And Sajid has denied cloning the Nomdi culture, the Javid, but unfortunately, someone did. Silver Brailman. According to the Daily Express, Silver Brailman is described by colleagues as, quote, effing useless. She is a member of the Tantra Order, a controversial religious sect founded by the sexual predator Dennis Lingwood, who went under a more exotic name, the Shargaman Shata, I think that's how you say it, until his death in 2018. She was inexplicably promoted to Attorney General in 2020, although she describes herself as a Premier League civil rights barrister and a government lawyer for the Guantanamo Bay inquiry, but no one has been actually able to find any evidence of this. Bizarrely, for a lawyer, she has opposed judicial review and the Human Rights Act, a QC, because the title comes with the job of Attorney General. She didn't even earn her professional career. Although her promotion was very owing to her willingness to advise to the contradiction to international law concerning the Northern Ireland Protocol, she is heavily involved in, and of course, a former chair of the Tufton Streets ERG. It's also worth pointing out, she's definitely backed by, of course, we started at the beginning, Steve Baker. He's backed her as a potential runner. Will she get in? It's very doubtful, but one of the things that's worth bringing up is the legal advice that she took for tearing up the Northern Ireland Protocol was apparently from a former Trump lawyer. And at the moment, it is unknown whether this former Trump lawyer has gotten, shall we say, in trouble with the January the 6th committee. And if that is certainly true, that will certainly damage her chances for running if that comes to light. And I do hope that comes to light. So next, Liz Truss. She's announced her candidacy just a couple of moments ago, I believe. So, being kind, one could describe Liz Truss as a political chameleon. That's certainly true. Previously an anti-monarchist member of the Liberal Democrats, she went on to become a vocal Tory Remainer in 2016 and the Brexit referendum. She has since morphed into a hard-right Eurosceptic Margaret Thatcher tribute act, which is certainly true. Replacing Liam Fox as Trade Secretary, she's held several meetings with the IEA, and her talks were again reclassified as personal discussions and removed from the Transparency Register in 2020 before an outcry forced her to reinstate them shortly afterwards. Described by Dominic Cummings as absolutely close to probably crackers as anybody I've ever met in Parliament, Truss has a very close ties to Tufton Street. And in 2020, she controversially appointed Mark Littlewood of the IEA and Matthew Connolly of the Adam Smith Institute as official government advisors. Despite being a very clunky media performer, she's tipped to be the ERG's favourite candidate. Of course, Rishi Sunak. Married to daughter of one of India's richest men, Rishi Sunak has been nicknamed the Maharaja of the Dales. He met his future wife at Stanford University in California, where he was under the mentorship of Paul Romer. The latter is an evangelical about charter cities and free ports, and Sunak shares his enthusiasm. He has also ties to Tufton Street, based on the Centre for Political Studies, a climate change denying think tank, for which he wrote a report for advocating Rome's ideas. These ideas are now informing UK government policy, and in March of 2021, Sunak's budget announced the creation of 8 free ports in England. So following Johnson's 2019 victory, more than a dozen former staff members from different Tufton Street think tanks were allocated to very influential special advisor roles, and 14 IEA alumni are serving in the cabinet. As Johnson looks on from inside Downing Street, the forthcoming leadership contest will be more than a battle for the role of Prime Minister. It will also be a fight for the soul of our nation. And I sort of do agree. It is incredibly worrying that this amount of infiltration has managed to happen, and that we have some of these awful, terrible ideas, like the idea for charter cities. Basically, you just ring fence off a city like Sheffield or Leeds, and basically anything goes. That's terrifying. that is generally quite terrifying. And who knows what could happen if these get carved off and sold off over to big American interests, because with, shall we say, them, that city of Sheffield then get cut out of technically of the UK, what happens to sort of its workers' rights, the benefits, everything that could, that makes it sort of part of the UK. It's quite terrifying that they are big advocates for this. And of course, free ports themselves are magnets for not only tax havens, but are not proven to show that they actually bring the economic benefits that Rishi Sunak promises that they will bring. You know, this is really, really, really worrying. And the direction that our government could go from bad to potentially even worse, particularly if someone like Liz Truss or Suella Braverman gets in. Again, I don't think Suella has any chance of it. To be honest, she's got too much baggage, as we've already mentioned before. I think the definite member, obviously winning there, certainly Rishi Sunak and of course Liz Truss. Certainly, we've talked about them before on this channel. Those are the potential two big, shall we say, names. I would definitely put them with certainly very big chances of getting to the final two. Obviously, Rishi Sunak has his own baggage, as does Liz Truss. But of course, as we've said, this will turn into a mudslinging match. And ultimately, I think certainly for the big names, it will certainly be to see how much mud they can throw on their fellow runners, but also how well they can actually survive the mud being thrown back at them. And like we've already said, it's going to turn into a bare knuckle boxing match of epic proportions, and they're going to literally tear themselves to shreds, not only in in the papers and the media across the UK. So look forward to that when all that starts to really probably kick off, probably today, maybe even tomorrow, once we know, of course, know the full candidate list. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there's a link to my Patreon page and a one-off link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can all buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much to all those people who do help support the channel. Like I say, the YouTube thank you button. There's also the YouTube subscriptions as well, where you get all sorts of little bells and whistles and widgets that you can use on YouTube. And as always, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you all next time.